מעיין תלכה את הפאנל הבא, וחברי הפאנל ישמחו להשיב על השאלות שלכם, אז אתם מוזמנים להפעיל את כל ה-30% במוח ולהתחיל לחשוב על זה. בבקשה.
וואי, שלום לכולם, איזה קהל מרשים יש פה ואיזה נוף מדהים. אז אני מעיין, עד לא מזמן עבדתי בסטארט-אפ שעוסק בכלל באיגוד של תמונות רפואיות, וממש לפני כמה חודשים הצטרפתי למטא כקומפיוטר ויז'ן אינג'יניר בריאליטי לאב, בעצם לעזור להם לפתח את המטאוורס. הצוות שלי בעצם מפתח טכנולוגיות שמאפשרות לגלות ולשתף תוכן תלת מימד, ובעצם לאפשר לאנשים לחבר בין העולם האמיתי, הפיזי, לעולם הוירטואלי. כחלק מהפיתוח של המטאוורס, בעצם אנחנו עובדים על טכנולוגיות שיאפשרו לא רק לראות, אלא גם לחוש סביבות וירטואליות, שזה בדיוק לשם מה שהתכנסנו פה היום. אז הזמנו היום אנשים סופר מכובדים, שבינתיים לא מבינים מילה ממה שאני אומרת, אם הם כבר פה. Okay, so I'm switching to English, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Kristen. She will focus on how audio can affect the way we perceive virtual space. And Nicholas, who is an haptic tech specialist. Hi, can you see and hear us?
We can't hear you, but we can feel you.
We can't hear them.
You can or cannot?
Oh, now we can hear Kristen and Nicholas.
Okay.
Yeah, we're coming in.
Great.
Great.
Great. So, Kristen, I would love to open with you. I welcome you to introduce yourself and your research topic. Next, we will move to Nicholas afterwards and to a Q&A session.
Sounds good. Can you see a slide here?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. Well, hi everyone. It's really nice to be here with you. I am Kristen Grauman. I'm a faculty member at UT Austin and a research director at FAIR. And I wanted to talk about small examples from our recent work that illustrate how we're looking at bringing computer vision together with audio, particularly to understand 3D spaces. And by that I mean, thinking about sounds and sights that take place in an environment like a home, where you're going to learn things from both those cues together about where things are, the ringing phone or someone speaking. You understand more about activity if you both listen and look for it. You understand more about semantics because objects have a certain way they look, but they also sound in different ways to be suggestive of their meaning. And then finally, really at the core, there's a lot to be learned from geometry and materials that come to us through sound. And so my work has been looking at how to bring out these elements in some interesting ways. So I wanted to highlight an example like our Sound Spaces project, which is an open source audio simulator that allows rendering sounds in 3D environments that have been scanned. And so if you look at this video, you'll see an environment that we're moving a virtual camera through, and at the same time, we're rendering the sound that you would hear if you were in those positions based on the geometry and materials of that space. So let's just take a quick listen. Okay, so I hope you could hear how the sounds get louder as you move towards them. If you listen with earphones from our website, you'll hear the left and right sounds in a binaural fashion to really get the realism of how you experience it in that 3D space. And in fact, we built this simulation platform to support research and also have challenges associated with it that people are tackling, for example, for audiovisual navigation through a space. Along those lines, we've been looking at how to understand the space so you could map it more richly if you not only see what's in front of you, let's say in a short video, but you can also hear incidental sounds in the environment. So what I'm going to show you next is such a pathway through an environment, a small video, where you start to be able to map out even the spaces you haven't seen. And that's what you'll see on the right. What happens here is the maps get much more complete than we can possibly achieve with vision alone because of the sound understanding that we can learn that says where is the free space or where are the major objects in this environment. And you can see how much larger the map gets on that right-hand side top-down view. And then, we're interested in being able to give an immersive experience for a person listening to, say, a speaker in a crowded environment like this one with a lot of background sound.
We haven't measured it, but it's cut down the noise to a point where...
In this audiovisual learning, we can enhance that, so we really focus on the speaker.
We haven't measured it, but it's cut down the noise to a point where we have the right...
And then finally, we're looking into how to transport sounds that we want to hear in different environments. Very important for the metaverse. So for example, I'll play a sound of some speech, and then I'll show you how our algorithms can make it sound as if it were coming from the pictured environments from left to right. So here's the original.
Stuff it into you.
Now what if it sounded like it was in that office in the picture there?
Stuff it into you.
Or the garage.
Spelling council. Stuff it into you.
Or the auditorium on the right.
Council. Stuff it into you.
I hope you can hear the
council.
more increasing reverberation that's inferred by the method to make it sound like it took place in those spaces. Okay? And then, I wanted to finally highlight this data set that we've been amassing together with partners from 13 different universities around the world. This is released this year. It's called Ego 4D. And I mention it here because this is a massive resource for video understanding, and it also is multimodal. So there's more than 3,000 hours of wearable camera data captured by people, almost 1,000 of them all around the world. And this is unscripted daily life activity for which we also have, for a large portion, the audio that accompanies it, as well as some other modalities. And if that all is interesting to you, check out the link I have here. So I'll end there as far as my quick intro. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's really amazing what you can achieve with the audio. So, Nicholas, you're welcome to introduce yourself and your field of research.
Great. So I just have a single slide that I'll share. All right, so are you able to see the slide and are the videos fine?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, so hello everyone. My name is Nick Colonies. That intro was great. I think in a nutshell, I'm the haptics guy, the touch interaction researcher. We've been asked to give these sort of talks. I typically present a 20 to 30 minute talk where I just go on and on. And this one is a bit more interesting, where in the aim to be a bit more fun and interactive, I'll give my super brief thoughts, and then we're gonna quickly open it up to Q&A. So I don't think that this audience needs much convincing that AR and VR in the metaverse will be the next big thing. In fact, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that we're on the edge of a human-computer interaction revolution that will fundamentally change how we communicate, work, and play. I find today's AR and VR technology sophisticated and actually pretty impressive. However, I think there's one big limitation. Specifically, current technologies reproduce only 2 of the 5 human senses, sight and sound. I believe that the next technological frontier will be adding a 3rd sense of touch to the metaverse, touch. So I think that people underestimate their sense of touch. In the real world, we use our sense of touch so often for so many things that we hardly even think about it. In fact, the sense of touch is more a monolithic term than a careful description of human abilities. Touch implies a wide range of sensations, including texture, vibration, the configuration of our bodies in space. This is called proprioception, force, temperature, and so on. Anyone that has ever dug their keys out of their bag using touch alone, or tried to tie their shoes when their hands are freezing, say when you're skiing or something, or experienced the maddening frustration of a sticky keyboard key, knows how important touch is in the physical world. My hypothesis is that touch will be just as important in the virtual world as it is in the physical one. In other words, I think the metaverse really needs touch. So what is the current state of technology? How close are we to getting high quality touch experiences? First, a little bit of terminology. For the uninitiated, haptics is the field that uses technology to stimulate a user's sense of touch. That's why I introduced myself as, the haptics guy. You can think of it as haptics is to touch as optics is to sight. And as someone that has been working in haptics for over a decade now, I think it'll be a while before we achieve the haptic rendering of our dreams. In short, the reason for this is that haptics is nascent today. Compared to vision and audio technology, it's essentially in the Stone Age. And I think we need fundamental breakthroughs in several areas. So on the screen, hopefully these are fairly self-explanatory. I've shown some examples of our public research. This ranges from a force feedback handheld controller that's in the upper right corner to a couple of different wristband or sleeve prototypes that can vibrate or shear or squeeze the user, as well as the fully fledged haptic glove. Note that these are all research prototypes that aim to inform and expand state-of-the-art. So I said I'd keep it quick. I hope you enjoyed this super quick intro and are as excited for haptics as I am. And I think we'll open it up for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now I will ask each of you a question before opening questions from the audience. So the first question to Nicholas. What is the biggest challenge for haptics in AR, VR, and the metaverse?
So I think I didn't quite get all that audio. I cut the end where I think I heard metaverse.
Okay. So, again, Nicholas. What is the biggest challenge for haptics in AR, VR, and the metaverse?
Okay, the audio is coming in loud and clear now. Thanks. So I think the broad answer is that haptics is inherently very multidisciplinary across academic disciplines. So it requires experts in human sensing and psychophysics, interaction design, robotics, hardware, rendering algorithms, that kind of thing. So it's just even getting kind of the community to a critical mass of sophistication. If I had to choose one area, like a magic wand to solve one problem, I would say it would be actuation, where current state-of-the-art has rigid components that buzz, and I'm hoping that in the coming years we can expand past that.
Great. And now question for Kristen. How do audio and vision work together to address perception problems?
Yeah, so the audio and the vision coming together can come together in two different ways. So on the one hand, they reinforce one another, and it's more like a consistency signal that an AI system can try to capitalize on their agreement. And then in other ways, it can be really truly complementary, and one is augmenting the other. So to give you examples, for the consistency and the reinforcing element, think about how a human speaker that you're listening to, there'll be properties of both their face and the way they're moving their mouth that would reinforce what your AI system trying to understand their speech or even recognize them, like that consistency would be helpful, right? The way things look there is like reinforcing the message you'd be getting about the way they sound. Similarly, for activity recognition, if you think about human activity as we do things, the objects we're using in front of us, the way we're using our hands, we can see all that, and then there's incidental sounds like I'm frying, and so the frying pan is sizzling. So these are just kind of reinforcing elements. And the same goes for metaverse needs where, I'd like to achieve that immersive experience for a user where the things from the virtual world are consistent with the with the real world in terms of how things should look and sound. And so it's important for our models to understand that reinforcing element. And then if I think about like on the complementary side, we've certainly seen how audio plays a great role for all the unobserved parts in the visual stream. So I can say I'm looking through a camera in this way, well, there's all this thing behind me that's happening, or the space behind me, as you saw in one of my examples. And that's where audio really shines as a complementary signal, because of the geometry it reveals in an omnidirectional way that we won't necessarily be seeing. And we've seen this play out really well for things like mapping or audiovisual navigation.
Thank you. Yes, someone is coming from the vision area. It's really excited to see how all the senses are combining together. Okay, we will move up to open questions from the audience. Feel free to ask Christine and Nicholas related questions. Yes, please.
This one is for Nicholas. How long till do you think that the haptic technologies will be integrated and implemented in our home Quest device?
So, Meta's a big place, and I think it's viewed as a spectrum of like the people that actually make money for the company on the product org and can probably answer that question a lot better than I can. And I'm one of the eggheads in the ivory tower working in research stuff that's 5 to 10 years out. So with respect to like, proper Quest variants product releases, I don't actually know. I can say with respect to research, I think that haptics tech will come out in phases. And that right now, our current state of the art is your phone or your smartwatch buzzes, and that's it. And I'd love to get to an area where we have a wristband that has a whole bunch of, an array of vibratactors or little elements that compress or shear your skin. I think that handhelds could get quite sophisticated with force feedback or shearing your palm or wrist. And eventually, I think, the dream in a decade plus is that we have a haptic glove that you can interact with a lot of virtual media matching the way that you interact it in the physical world.
Thank you.
Yes. Over there.
Hey, this is again for Nicholas. It seems that you're mostly focused on wearable haptic feedback. Is there any experiments done for I don't know, a room-like surface changing stuff? Because I remember a project already done in MIT from 2014 or something like that, using actuators to make a surface that can change its shape. And it was interactive, and you said it yourself, that the linear actuators are basically it's the pixels you can use for haptic feedback, if I can compare it to graphic design. So is there anything other than wearable computing, other than wearable haptic feedback that you can, that you are trying to accomplish in your research?
Yeah, so I believe I know what you're talking about. That was made by Sean Ulmer, who then after his time in the Media Lab moved to Stanford where I did my PhD. And yeah, you're correct that where the devices I showed were wearables or foldables. Other classes of haptic displays exist, and the one you spoke to is sometimes called in the field an encounter style, where you encounter with your hands. And other variants exist using puffs of air or ultrasound. There's also grounded, kind of like robotic mechanisms. Medical robotics is a great example of this, where you kind of strap yourself into an exoskeleton type thing, and it gives you haptic feedback. I do think that each type of haptic display category, we call it, a form factor, will be relevant in the metaverse. Our group right now is focusing on wearables targeting the hands. And our primary reason for this is because our hands are the primary interactor of how we understand and experience the world using our sense of touch.
We have time for last question. Oh. Okay, I guess we're done here. So, thank you so much, Nicholas, for joining us. And Kristen, hi.
Thank you. Really appreciated it. See you next time, maybe in person.
Great, love that. Okay.